Hello and good evening. You're watching me, Sanket Upadhyay, on the Federal. The show is called AI with Sanket. This is the AI of news because news in India today requires not artificial but analytical intelligence. The NTA, or the National Testing Agency, has done it again. Yes, it was an agency which was brought to centralize and streamline the examination process in this country. But has the National Testing Agency centralized incompetence, centralized corruption, and created so much confusion in this country that they cannot even conduct one test properly? Now, is this a solution India could have done without? And what is the right solution? I have with me the founder of Careers 360, Maheshwar Peri. Peri sir, good evening. I just want to ask you, what is with this experiment of the central government? Of course, it was paved with good intentions. The idea was that you have a centralized system which introduces greater transparency and brings in more efficiency in the testing process. But from NEET to UGC-NET to a whole host of examinations, from corruption to incompetence, everything wrong is associated with the National Testing Agency. Your thoughts?
So I think, first of all, I do not want to get into any assumptions about it, Sanket, about corruption and all. But for sure, there is a lot of incompetence. Just look at this UGC-NET paper itself. There are about 150 questions that are actually
Sir,
happening.
if you don't mind, I would just like to tell you why I'm using the word corruption, because in the CBI charge sheet in the NEET case, CBI has said in their charge sheet that paper setters of the NTA who were hired by the NTA were very clearly, it has been established that they were involved in corruption. They were caught receiving certain gifts. That's why I use this word. Sorry, sir.
No, I get your point. It is not officer of NTA. NTA does obviously reach out to an academic to prepare a question paper, and those people is what has been. But ignore that for a moment. I think let's not get into that debate. For sure, it's absolute incompetence. There is no two ways about it, because now look at this UGC-NET paper. There are 150 questions in English, right? 67 of them were exactly a repetition of what happened 2 years back. Word by word, including MCQs, including the order in which the response was given. 67 of them. On June 25th, this examination is conducted. On June 30th, the examination ended, because there are 87 papers in all, but they're talking of 3 papers. Remember, English is one of the major examination that for 70, 80,000 students take the English paper, just English, and then you have sociology and something else. And the complaints started flowing in on from 1st July onwards. And there were multiple kinds of complaints, one being the spelling errors and all, which NTA press release talks about. 2 is a repetition of questions, but they don't talk of the number of repetition of questions. 67 on 150 is too much of a thing for you to ignore. And then they talk about spelling mistakes and this and that. And then, by the way, there was also a complaint about paper leak, that, a paper was found a day earlier and those kind of things. Let's just focus on the 67 questions that are repeated. It doesn't take 7 weeks for a committee to find out that 67 questions are repeated. It doesn't take, right? On 30th, 25th, the exam is conducted. By 1st July, the complaints started pouring in. You just need to take is, glance at it and say, listen, there's a problem out here. And you decide then and there. But NTA, and that's where, earlier I would never question the integrity of NTA, in the sense I will say incompetence and all. But this time around, the NTA was found in its integrity also found wanting, because they actually knew that there was a problem out here, which is why they did not even announce the answer key. Answer key, Sanket, comes 3 days after the examination is done, because you have the question paper in your hand and you know what are the answers for those question papers, because the question setters, when they set the question, also give the answer, right? They don't declare the answer key for 6 weeks. On 8th of August, the students who took the examination announced that if we don't get an answer key, we'll go and protest on 11th of August in front of the NTA office. On 10th of August, they actually give the answer key for 84 of the 87 question subjects, excluding sociology, English, and those kind of things. And then on the 10th of August, so 8th of August, they announced the thing. On 10th of August, first of all, they come out with this notice that we'll be announcing this within this week. The answer key will be given within this week. And then they give the answer key for 84 of the 87. And then on 16th of August, they come out with the news, which is a bombshell for the students who take in UGC-NET, that listen, for 3 of the papers, there will be a reconduct of the examination. In which world are we living that we can't find out that there were spelling errors, there factual errors, or 67 of the questions are repeated? And does it take 6 to 7 weeks? In which case, it's complete incompetence, isn't it? Don't tell me that you can't find out there's a spelling error in the question paper, for which NTA itself claims that they have to reconduct the examination. Don't tell me that they can't state how many questions were repeated, or they didn't know how many questions were repeated that they actually had to reconduct the examination. It was there for the calling on first week of July. They kept delaying the problem, and now what happens is the entire recruitment process also gets delayed, because you were holding the problem in your hand. You didn't have the courage of conviction to come out and say, listen, we have another big problem in our hands. And when things subsided, they announced this whole thing. In the process, lakhs of people who've taken the examination have to wait for further before they become the research fellow. And that's tragic, because I'm not even getting at corruption and all, which you said. I'm saying there is definitely incompetence, and the fact that they knew that they had a problem in their hand and they delayed the decision process is lack of integrity for me.
Perry sir, I just want to ask you, obviously, see, we have identified the problem. The problem is that this National Testing Agency does not have the conviction with which it can conduct examinations, which is, by the way, their core competence. This agency was set up to conduct examinations, and they've been found wanting in a series of examinations. UGC-NET is, Perry sir, for fellowships, for PhD, for professors, and for a very high stakes examination, for them to falter like this. Do you think this had to do with the problem they were trying to sort in the month of June, which was reconducting NEET? So one problem at a time. So they decided that let's put a lid on this. We'll deal with this later. Let's just get NEET going first. And in that sense, there is a problem.
There is no two ways about it, Sanket. There is very clearly, these people knew that questions were repeated. These people knew that there were serious errors in 3 of the papers for which they need to go for a reconduct. It is just that they delayed announcing that they have another bombshell in their hand, because they were scared of what was happening in NEET and re-NEET. Mind you, 20th July, the Jantar Mantar protest was happening, and there was a big thing. First, when you come down to June 30th, when the last examination is conducted in UGC-NET also, the Jantar Mantar protests were on, and they're delaying the inevitable. They did not have the courage to come out and say, listen, we have another problem in our hand. And now they're going to deal with another bigger problem, which is that, they actually have to explain themselves a lot more of why it took them 7 weeks to realize that 67 of the questions were repetition of what happened in 2024. It is ridiculous. And they don't seem to understand the pain that a student goes through in doing this entire thing, because after 7 weeks they get to know that they have to redo the examination. Listen, if you announce it on June 30th, there is a problem in our hand and we're going to deal with it, and we're going to conduct it within the first week, because in that flow now they would have finished the whole thing. They didn't want to. They don't mind putting the students in problem as long as they're protecting themselves from the barrage of criticism that was coming their way. They never had student interest in their mind.
But Perry sir, this is Babudam at its peak. I mean, if the job of an agency is to conduct examinations, and if you are failing in that very basic duty, what is the solution to this problem? Clearly, NTA in its present form is not the solution.
See, first of all, I think the bigger problem, Sanket, is that when you're trying to conduct all kinds of examination, when you don't have any understanding of what the examination subject matter, question, difficulty level, and everything is concerned. I remember sometime back in 2025, I think the NEET question paper was very, very difficult for some of these question papers, which is physics and chemistry. And when questions were raised on it, I remember talking to one of the senior most officers in bureaucracy, and he says, Mahesh, the problem that happened was for NEET, for the physics and chemistry paper, they went to an IIT professor, and it was a very tough paper. See, when you're dealing with NEET, you actually make biology and zoology to be difficult and physics and chemistry to be slightly easier, because that's the area that students are looking for. So when you go to an IIT professor and ask them to set a paper for physics, what is easy for them is difficult for this genre. But they do that, and that is the problem of expertise. That is the problem of academic understanding of what you're testing for and the purpose for which the test is created. NTA doesn't understand that. It is a technical body which has connect with about 3,000 4,000 centers, nothing more than that, and they know how to transport papers, how to print papers, and that's what they know. They don't have understanding of the test, the conduct of the test, the reason why the test is conducted, the difficulty level of the test, the kind of questions that must come and not come, how to create a question bank. They only rely on outsiders. If the outsider is a drunk man sitting outside and trying to create a question paper overnight, it will pass the muster because these guys do not have the ability or the capability of checking it out and judging the whole thing and then going through. At least that is what I get to think of it now when I see 67 questions being the same, and and worst of all, they actually had to set up a committee which gave a report after 7 weeks saying there is a problem in the question paper. It doesn't require you give it to my kid, my son, he would do it in 1 hour time.
Perry sir, this is scary. And obviously, for any concerned parent, for any concerned person who is taking these exams, it will be scary. So, what is the solution? I mean, how were UGC-NET exams conducted before the NTA? Was that a better system? Because, I again come back to the basic question. This is not ideal. This is not solving any problem.
So the thing is, one is, you cannot make the contractor of a bridge to be the engineer and the architect of the bridge also. What's happening at this point in time is that you're making a contractor who has contracted with 5,000 test centers to be the testing body. It is not a testing body; it's a conducting body. That's perfectly fine with me, right? Unless you have academics helming each of this examination, exactly putting in place of how it must be done, what it is being done, why the student is being tested, what they must be tested on, and what the process. For example, we come out and say NEET is from next year onwards computer-based test. Now, who announces that? Do you have the ability to conduct a computer-based test for 22 lakh, 23 lakh students? Even for JEE, Sanket, there are 14 lakh students who take the examination. It is done over 10 sessions. There are 5 days, morning and evening, 2 sessions. That were 10 sessions, which means the ability to conduct a JEE examination is for not more than 1.5 lakh seats. What does it mean? You have 1.5 lakhs seats in test centers where computers are available. That's what we're talking about. Now multiply that by 15. You don't have the ability or the capability. The reason why SAT, GMAT and all are conducted around the year is because you know that you want a confidential space to deal with this whole thing. You do not have 22 lakh seats which can be done in one single flow. So assuming you want to do with computer-based test also, either you do it across multiple sessions, which NMC again disagrees because there is another conversation that comes in because normalization becomes a problem, or you go through the JE route, which essentially is saying, boss, I'm going to do it over 10 days and each session would have about 2 lakh students taking the examination. So bring the academics back into setting the paper, not just setting the paper, actually up to a point in time, they must handhold. The logistics part of it is what NTA should be dealing with, not the academics part of it. Today, academics and logistics also seems to be being handled by NTA, which is a problem. Like, you do not make a hospital administrator to be a doctor. Right now, what we're doing is we're making a hospital administrator to be doing a surgery also on all of us, which is a problem.
Or you're asking the postman to write a letter for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think I now have an idea of what you're trying to say, of where the problem with the NTA is. Now, Perry sir, how do we solve this? What would your suggestion be? Because clearly this is, again, I repeat myself, this is not working out. This will, if it has happened now, it will happen again. So what are the structural changes? First of all, do you feel NTA as a body is required or not? And if yes, then what are the improvements that you suggest?
See, whatever you name it as, whatever it is, there is a body that would be, doing the logistics of the examination, Sanket. That you cannot remember. You name this NTA to something else, it will be the same, right? The problem is, I think the current NTA is mired in so much of lack of trust by the student community that it is best that it is dissolved, right? And you have the Nandan Nilekani committee, which is actually looking into this whole thing, the task force that's been set up. They must come up with a recommendation of how they must go about it, because they will have more granular data to understand and make some certain kind of recommendations. But whatever recommendations they make, if it is still to be executed by NTA, I do foresee a problem, not because there'll be something that will be coming out, but because there is lack of trust. When the student community and the people of the country lose trust so much, so badly that you actually had for the first time a government of India bending backwards to satisfy the student needs. Mind you, it never happened in the last 12, 14 years that I know of, right? So when you actually have that kind of an agitation where students were out there on the streets, even right now we have students out there on the streets, it means that you cannot take that lack of trust to be, you can't claw yourself back into it. That's how much trust they've lost, right? And from that perspective, you need to let Nandan Nilekani's committee task force set up a recommendation which is beyond NTA, create a body which might have academics for each of these examinations. That, for example, if I as an IIT wants to have, use NTA, then I must have my own team members sitting there conducting the NTA, JEE examination, but NTA using the logistics and I driving the academic side of it. At this point in time, you just pass on the thing to them and say, listen, you conduct the examination. That's not how it's going to work out.
But Perry sir, I'll tell you what the problem is. I've spoken to a lot of people. Of course, you have spoken about this in the past also. Do you feel that the manner in which the testing is happening, where you pass on something as critical as the academics of conducting a test on contract basis to someone else, this is where the problem occurs. You see, academics cannot be contractual in nature, and that too in such a casual form. Maybe logistics can, but academics cannot. That's the core purpose of NTA.
Which is the problem? What I'm trying to say is that, you can't have a good administrator who's running a hospital to be doing a surgery. And right now that seems to be happening. At least that's what I understand. Because I cannot, in my wildest dream, believe that it took 7 weeks for a committee to find out that 67 questions were repeated or there were spelling errors. It doesn't. It takes a couple of hours for you to find out saying, listen, we have a problem in hand, let's deal with the problem. My angst against them, till last time at least I was still, trying to understand their point of view. This time my angst is, I genuinely believe, Sanket, that these people knew that they had a problem in their hands. They postponed dealing with the problem because they didn't want to add fire to the fuel that was happening then. But in the process, they derailed the future of about 9 lakh students. That is unpardonable. Because they wanted to save their own skin. So what did they do? They threw the students into the bin.
And you feel that there is so much of distrust in the National Testing Agency that the best solution will be to find a new solution, and till that time, just disband this organization because it has already lost a lot of faith and trust.
Sanket, another thing I'll tell you, we actually had this problem of paper leaks and all. You had the Minister of Education resigning, you had the Secretary of Higher Education resigning, you had the UGC chair resigning or moving out, but the NTA chief still holds on. You tell me, what is it that made these people think that NTA is not as culpable as the Minister and the Secretary of Higher Education is? It should start from here, isn't it? And you talk of 47 people being sacked. If you go back to the question that was answered in Parliament, only 29 were the full-time employees of them. What are the 47 people sacked? They are basically the outside contracting agency. They would, like you and I would always have contractual employees. I sack them and say I've sacked so many people. It's a number that's been thrown at us as a what you say, throwing biscuits to it. But
face
nothing
saver.
more, nothing less. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is not going to cut much ice in rebuilding that trust.
No, this is very difficult. I think it's very difficult for NTA to claw back and earn the trust of the student community. Every examination that they do, in my opinion, will have some kind of a question mark and suspicion thrown at them, and they'll be defending themselves all through. And look at the kind of response that they have. When CBSE thing also happened, CBSE, OMR sheets thing happened also. These people were responding to each student, and then with that another paragraph was added saying, anyone spreading fake news will take them legal action. Yeah, you're dealing with student community. Don't bully them. Don't bully them to such an extent that they're scared of even coming out. I understand that you want to protect the integrity of the institution, so you're trying to clamp down on fake claims. But when you're dealing with students, you need to deal with it slightly differently. They're a different generation altogether, and more importantly, they're very vulnerable. They're scared, and those kind of things. Don't push them so hard that they rise and then they trample you, which is what seems to have happened here. How does an NTA respond to a student grievance and say, "We are responded to this. This is the response that we have, and anyone making false claims will take legal action against them." What are you trying to threaten? Who are you trying to threaten? A generation. It's not about a student. You're threatening a generation. You need to be slightly more sensitive when you're dealing with our own children. They are our own children. They have a question mark, they have failed, or they did not get the score that they wanted. So they would come back to you and say, "Listen, I think I feel cheated, and this is the reason." It is for you to find reason. Like in my days, Sanket, whenever such things happen, the body would come back and respond to you and not threaten you. They will come back with their own version of the facts, but they don't threaten you. This is not the way to deal with children, and that's another big reason why NTA will not be trusted for a long, long time.
But for me, I think the big highlight of what you have said today is the very, I would say, notorious or nefarious design of a national testing agency to try to suppress a wrong, a wrong deed. Suppress so that at least you are done with one storm, so that you can take over. So this suppression of fact is notorious.
Because you tell me, Sanket, in which world do you take 7 weeks to find out that 67 of the questions were repeated? How much time does it take for you to find out, take out the 24 paper where students have complained and that it's, mimicking what happened in 2024? All you need to do is to put the 2 question papers up there and say, "Listen, there's a problem out here." Like, you go through all this, the statement that they talk of, spelling errors, and those kind of things. Does it take time for you to find out spelling errors that you need to form a committee which takes 7 weeks to submit a report based on which you decide about these things? There is a problem out here. You're not taking the future of the students seriously. You're taking them for granted that you took 7 weeks to submit a report which is so basic and so fundamental, because it's all based on factualities. It doesn't require investigation. It doesn't require you to reach out to thousands of people and understand what their meaning is. You have 2 question papers in your hand and you compare them and say there's a problem out here. You have a question paper in your hand when you have spelling errors, you know that there's a problem out there because you know that there's spelling errors which have compromised the integrity of the question paper itself. You know that. You don't take 7 weeks or 6 weeks to find that out and then announce that. And by the way, you are nefarious in your activity of not coming out with the answer key for 6 weeks, which typically takes not more than 3-4 days. Then itself, everyone knew that there was a problem out here. Then students said that we'll protest in front of NTA office. Then they come out with a circular, a statement saying that we'll announce the whole thing within this week. Then they come out and announce the answer key for 84 of the 87 subjects within the week. And after 5 days, they come out and cancel their examination paper. What more do you want from these people? The chronology itself is damning against NTA.
And it's a cover-up, and somehow magically the NTA chief stays on. Thank you very
Absolutely.
much, Maheshwar Peri sir, founder of Careers 360. I think you spoke your mind very clearly, and this is the sort of conversation that NTA and the new education minister must listen to. You see, badgering people into conformity is not going to work. Don't have a problem with people being dimagi. We need some grey matter. Thank you very much, Maheshwar Peri, for joining us. Thank you.